never thought a dusty cardboard box in my closet could feel like Pandora's. 12 years of adulthood, complicated jobs, failed relationships, and empty apartments didn't prepare me for the punch of nostalgia when I lifted that lid. It wasn't just high school memorabilia. It was him, and among crumpled essays, faded photos, and old concert tickets, I found the envelope, his handwriting on it, perfect and deliberate, almost mocking me for leaving it unopened all these years. I froze. My heart stuttered like a record skipping. We shared a locker in high school, yes, a fact that still feels absurd when I say it out loud. He was the golden boy, untouchable in a way that made my teenage self ache. I, on the other hand, was the invisible kid who only spoke when spoken to, who hid poems in the pages of textbooks instead of confessing anything aloud. And yet, somehow, he had known. The envelope trembled in my hand. I could feel the imprint of his fingers, a ghostly presence lingering after more than a decade. My first instinct was to put it down, to leave the past buried in the cardboard abyss. But my fingers, traitorous and eager, tore it open. The letter smelled faintly of old paper and summer nights. His scent, impossibly, in some corner of my memory. And then I read, "I don't know if you will ever see this. I don't even know if I have the courage to tell you now. But I need you to know that the way you looked at me in the hallway, with that little smile, broke something open in me. I wrote this letter on the day I left for college because I didn't know if I could ever say the words out loud. I loved you then, and I think I always will. That was it. No grand declarations. No flowery metaphors. Just a raw, trembling honesty that made my hands shake and my stomach sink. I had imagined him confessing in some dramatic moment by the football field, under the bleachers, in front of everyone, but no. He had chosen ink over embarrassment, permanence over the chance of rejection. I sank onto the edge of my bed, envelope clutched to my chest. My apartment felt smaller, suffocating with memories that weren't mine alone. He had been everything I had wanted to be brave enough to approach, and now here, in the stillness of my 30s, he was calling me back from the grave of my regrets. It was ironic, really. In high school, I had obsessed over every little detail about him, the way he laughed at jokes he didn't understand, how his hair always fell perfectly into place, the gentle tilt of his head when he listened. And he had noticed me. He had loved me. And I, too timid and afraid, had never realized it in time. The next morning, I walked the streets of New York City, the city alive but somehow blurred around me. Every couple passing by seemed to mock me with their careless touches and open laughter. I felt like a man living in a parallel universe, one where the love I had ignored was waiting silently for my recognition. I started looking him up. Google, LinkedIn, social media, anything to find out if he still existed in a form tangible enough to talk to touch, to confess the years of longing I had kept buried. And then, as if fate were conspiring, I found him. He was in the city too, a cafe owner, smiling in photos with warm, inviting eyes. My chest tightened. I walked past his cafe twice before I could summon the courage to enter. And when I did, the world seemed to pause. He was behind the counter, tying his apron, hair slightly longer but eyes unmistakably his. My voice caught. "Hi," I said, a simple word heavy with 12 years of lost time. He looked up, blinked, and for a moment, I thought he might not recognize me. But then his lips curved into that same subtle, knowing smile I remembered. "I was wondering when you'd come back," he said, as if he had been waiting for this moment too. The cafe smelled like fresh coffee and baked bread, ordinary yet intoxicating, familiar yet surreal. We talked, slowly at first, words brushing against the edges of awkwardness, then tumbling into laughter, memories, and confessions. I told him about the letter, my hands shaking as I handed it to him. He read it silently, eyes scanning lines that mirrored his own sentiments, lips twitching, and then he looked up at me, heart in his gaze. "You didn't know," he whispered. "You never knew." "I didn't," I admitted. "I was too scared, too stupid. I let everything slip through my fingers." He reached across the small table, fingers brushing mine, a touch that ignited a spark frozen for over a decade. It was intimate, Not in the desperate way of teenage crushes, but in the tender, knowing way of people who have survived distance, regret, and time. For the first time in years, I felt seen, fully and completely. And I realized that love, even delayed, could still exist with a quiet, steady flame, ready to warm the coldest corners of the heart. We spent the rest of the afternoon wandering the streets, sharing coffees and stories. There were confessions, gentle teasing, and laughter that made strangers turn their heads. It felt as if the city itself had paused to witness our reunion, to bless the cautious but unstoppable pull of fate. And in that moment, 12 years of lost time dissolved into the present. Every missed chance, every awkward glance, every silent longing was no longer a regret, it was a prelude to the miracle of finding each other again, ready to start anew. Evening fell over the city, painting the streets in amber and rose. The cafe had closed, leaving only the quiet hum of the streetlights and the distant honk of cabs. He walked beside me, shoulders brushing lightly against mine, and I felt the weight of all those years melting away with every step. It was strange how someone could feel simultaneously new and familiar, a stranger yet home. We paused at a small park, a fountain bubbling faintly in the corner. He sat on the edge of a bench, leaning back casually, and I mimicked him, trying not to fidget with nerves I hadn't felt in years. Silence settled between us, comfortable yet charged. "I kept hoping you'd come back," he said finally, voice low and honest. "Even when I told myself it was impossible." I swallowed hard, emotions tangling in my throat. "I thought I had moved on," I confessed. "I thought I was okay, until I found the letter." He smiled softly, eyes glimmering with a mix of relief and longing. "I knew you'd find it someday. Maybe it had to take 12 years for us to be brave enough." I laughed nervously, the sound echoing in the cool night air. 12 years is a long time to wait for courage." He shrugged, leaning slightly closer. "Maybe courage is just realizing the person you love hasn't disappeared, even when you're terrified to admit it." That simple, intimate truth hit me like a tidal wave. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, not sad, not regretful, but raw, overwhelming hope. Without thinking, I reached for his hand. His fingers twined with mine naturally, effortlessly, like they were made to fit together all along. "I never stopped thinking about you," I whispered. "Not for a day." He tilted his head, brushing a loose strand of hair behind his ear, and smiled, the kind that warms the entire body. Neither did I. I thought maybe I imagined it, but I didn't. The warmth of his hand held mine firmly, a tether against the years of fear and uncertainty. And then, without preamble, he leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath, soft and steady. My heart hammered, every instinct screaming at me to run and to stay simultaneously. And then his lips met mine, gentle at first, testing the waters, and I responded instinctively, letting myself fall into a kiss I had dreamed of for 12 years. It wasn't the awkward, fumbling kiss of high school crushes. It was deep, full of the tension of lost time, of love restrained too long, of longing finally allowed to breathe. I felt every moment of teenage longing, every skipped heartbeat, every unspoken word, all pour into that simple, perfect connection. When we finally pulled apart, we laughed quietly, breathless, foreheads resting together. "We really survived this," he said. "All the years, all the distance. We're still here." I nodded, unable to speak. Somehow, the words didn't feel enough. Instead, I brushed my thumb against his knuckles, savoring the intimacy that felt newly earned and eternally familiar. We walked back to his apartment, the city lights shimmering like scattered stars. He opened the door, gesturing for me to come in, and I stepped over the threshold as though crossing into a new life. The place was small, but cozy, with books stacked neatly, photos on the walls, and an inviting couch that suggested comfort and familiarity. "I wanted you to feel at home," he said softly, watching me take in the surroundings. "Even if it's just for tonight." I smiled, feeling a flutter of something that had nothing to do with the past and everything to do with the present. It already feels like home, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He led me to the couch and we sat close, shoulders touching. We spoke little, letting the comfort of proximity and the shared silence speak for us. I felt the pulse of his life against mine, the steady beat that mirrored my own, and it felt like magic, like time itself had bent just to give us this moment. Hours passed unnoticed, marked only by the soft hum of traffic outside and the faint ticking of a wall clock. Eventually, he turned to me, eyes glimmering with mischief and tenderness. "Do you remember that time in high school, when we got caught in the rain and ran into the gym locker room?" I laughed, the memory sharp and vivid. "You mean when we both got drenched and ended up hiding behind the lockers, trying not to be seen?" He chuckled, leaning back, a hand brushing mine again. "Yeah, you were so serious about everything even then, and I couldn't stop looking at you." "And you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Were you trying to act cool, as usual?" He grinned, leaning closer, nose nearly touching mine. "I was trying to act cool, but I was terrified of letting you know how much I wanted you." I shook my head, incredulous. "And all this time we both just waited." He shrugged, but his eyes were soft, full of something that felt like promise. "And now we don't have to." We laughed again, and this time there were no barriers, no ghosts of regret. Only the gentle warmth of hands intertwined, of lips brushing, of hearts speaking in quiet, unspoken words. That night, we talked and held each other, letting the intimacy grow naturally, without rush, without pretense. We traced memories on each other's skin, fingers lingering where laughter had once echoed, lips brushing where smiles had once been shared. It was tender, passionate, and profoundly human, the kind of love that survives years, distance, and fear. Sleep came slowly, wrapped in each other's arms, the city's hum outside our windows fading into a comforting lullaby. In that quiet, I realized that love doesn't always need dramatic confessions or perfectly timed declarations. Sometimes, it's found in the subtle, the enduring, the patient waiting that finally leads to this. A moment where two hearts recognize each other again, 12 years later, and know they were never truly apart. Morning light filtered through the blinds, warming his apartment and illuminating the familiar yet new contours of his face. He stirred, eyes opening to meet mine, and for a moment, we just looked at each other, laughing softly at the absurdity of time, at the miracle of this reunion. "Good morning," he whispered, voice thick with sleep and happiness. "Good morning," I replied, heart full, hands still entwined with his. And in that light, with 12 years of memories behind us and an endless future ahead, I realized something extraordinary. Love that survives the years, the mistakes, and the silence is the strongest kind of love there is. And now, finally, we were allowed to live it together openly and completely. We had waited 12 years for courage, and now, at last, we had it. Not in letters, not in fleeting glances, not in silent crushes, but here, in each other's arms, in laughter, in soft kisses and shared warm the love that was patient, enduring, and profoundly ours. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that this closeness, this intimacy, this love was everything I had ever wanted, everything I had ever waited for, and everything I would never let go of again. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.